Hi, everybody. My name's Terry Ray. This is our fireside chat with Banco Popular Dominicano. We have our lovely friend here, Diego Laverde, here to join us. He's the CISO at Banco Popular. Each one of our customers, Diego, has a history to share. Yeah, I always like to begin these conversations with a little bit of a conversation where you can share a little bit of color about who you are, what you do. You even share a little bit about Banco Popular. I know earlier in prior discussions when you and I spoke, we talked about Banco Popular as a non-Latin American. I always thought Banco Popular was one big company. So I understand that it's not necessarily. Maybe you can explain that to us a little bit and a little bit about your role.
So the thing is that there are many Banco Popular. There's a Banco Popular in Colombia, another one in Panama. There are Banco Popular all over the place, and they're not really related. It's just that it's a common name to be used on banking franchises all over Latin America. But ours it's only has presence in the Dominican Republic, in La Española Island is where we are located, and the Dominican Republic is more or less half the size of Indiana, twice as much as many people. So it's a very vibrant economy in the middle of the Caribbean, mostly based on tourism and many um, imports and exports and industries based on agriculture exploitation. So that's the island where Banco Popular is the biggest private bank, the biggest commercial bank, and it shares and fights for the first place with a local state-owned bank for the first place on the retail banking as well. So that's a little bit of color on what the bank does. I've been with Banco Popular for almost 4 years already. Um, I'm coming from Citibank. I was working for Citigroup in Latin America, and I moved here 4 years ago to this wonderful island, and I've been here since.
Now, you lived in America for a while, right?
Yeah, I work. I'm Colombian. My origin is Colombian, and I've been working in uh, all over the place in Latin America. I live a couple of years actually in in Los Angeles and in California, and I live as well in other places, and I pretty much know 23 out of the 20 countries in Latin America just because this is where Citigroup had franchises, and I visit those countries during 15 years that I work with them.
And what is your role today at Banco Popular? Day to
So
day,
I'm
what are
the
you
CISO at
doing?
this
And
point. So we have here a CISO organization, but we also have here as well the continuity of business organization and technology. Technology is risk management is with my group as well. So I have that role of the CISO, the technology risk management, and the continuity of business, and a couple more things that I cannot remember every day.
when they come up, you remember them quite quickly, I bet,
I
right?
will, I will.
Well, look, let's jump into this. Our 25 minutes goes by pretty fast, and even though I'm a fast talker, I'm going to try and slow down because first off, I appreciate you speaking English. I know you speak English very well, but I appreciate you speaking English because my Spanish is absolutely horrible, even though I grew up in Texas, and it should be much better than what it is. I will say this. So, financial services in the organizations that work with Imperva have always had kind of a combination requirement, an audit requirement and a security requirement that they had to meet. Sometimes those organizations have one of those requirements or another of those requirements is the priority which drives a particular project. I need to answer a question for an audit, or I've had an internal question that came up and I need to answer this question. And so therefore I need data security. My question to you is, given audit and security, and these are often requirements, how did these requirements influence your priorities for securing data?
So as you mentioned, there's a balance here. There are two big forces here. One is compliance, and the other one is protection and defense. So um, CISOs will struggle with that all the time. and you have to comply with every rule if you want to play in the financial sector. That's not optional. But you also have to defend. You have to be secure and feasible and sound and secure if you want to operate. You cannot go to the street with a faulty application. You cannot go to the street with a vulnerable ATM. You need a mix of both. You need, as always, Buddhist way. You have to go. You need to look for the middle path. So this type of products, when you come up with the problem of selecting one of these products, you want to be sure that it does check all the boxes on the compliance side of the house, but you also need to be sure that it provides you a provides you a valuable solution in terms of defense and in terms of security. You're looking always for that. Those are going to be the best solutions, the best choices for your organization when it comes to picking a product for security. And the case that we were going to be talking today about it is one of those cases. We found a solution that does check all the boxes that we need to check, all the standards that we need to go through, but also provide us a very strong tool when it comes to identifying possible attempts of an intruder, or so. Yes, we live in that path of the middle.
Well, and I've seen that kind of behavior in organizations for years, where there's a drive. One side or the other side is certainly a drive, or a use case, or whatever we want to call it. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing today. And it's interesting. I had a call with a financial services organization, and by the way, this conversation is not just about financial services organizations. It's just coincidentally Diego is with a financial services organization, but most organizations have some kind of regulatory compliance somewhere, whether it's privacy or what have you, and probably every organization has a security need one way or the other. But I've seen in conversations with FSI, financial services and insurance, the mileage that organizations get from regulatory compliance varies a lot, like the mileage that my car says it could get whenever I bought it, 29 miles to the gallon. That's downhill in warm weather with new tires and the wind behind my back. I get 29 miles an hour. Same thing is true with regulation. That I found is regulations say you need to solve all these problems, but how you solve those problems depends a whole lot on the regulator. And that sometimes they say, did you buy it? Show me the receipt that you bought data security. Yep, got it. Check, done. Others are, oh, you have data security. Let me dig into that GUI a little bit. Let me see the product. Show me the answers. I have this question. Will it show me this? So it's always this kind of, I don't say a cat and mouse game, but I see some customers that just need to get that checkbox. And I see other customers that need to solve a security problem where a checkbox is not going to be the answer that you need to get to. So my question to you here is what compelled you to ultimately turn to Imperva data security to meet these goals? I'm sure you looked at other technologies. What was it about Imperva's data security technology that got you to where you are today?
So we did our due diligence when selecting this tool. We went through all of the process of finding the best of breed and finding the best solution, but it was not the right solution for us. We didn't account for specifics of our database consolidation, of the throughput needed, and we fumbled twice. So we tried to release the product, put it in production, and we crashed the databases of many critical systems for a couple of hours. It took us 2 hours, 3 hours to recover, and we did it again. And it was painful. It was a horrible situation where business lost trust in our solutions. They really were very concerned whenever we were trying to release any other solution, any other control to production because of that. So it was a very couple troublesome months. And during this process, the folks from Multicomputos approached us, and they were just asking us, what is it that we needed to do in these days? What is it that we're working on? And they presented this solution as one for the problem we were in, because we still had to deliver something very quick for a compliance reason. So they worked with us very, very close to us in a direction that I thought it was the best direction. It was that let's do a agentless solution, because I really thought that was the best solution at the time. for our specifics. And so they came with us, worked with us in the agentless solution, but they also work with us in the agent-based solution, the Imperva agent. And they showed me wrong, and that was great. That was great because we had a much more efficient solution, the agent-based solution, efficient in terms of cost and management, a lot less complex. I don't need to duplicate the traffic. I don't need to store all of that and analyze. And no, you have to do, you get to do everything in a single place. So they worked with us. They did a couple of proofs of concept, and they delivered. And then the project went to production seamless. Business didn't even realize that it happened. DBAs didn't fight with it. They didn't really saw a change uh, from the day of the release and the previous day. So it worked as it should. It was a seamless rollout to production, and after the couple months that I mentioned that were horrible, this was really good.
That's good to hear. I mean, it's always nice when you can find something that ultimately gets you to where you need to be. I think a lot of organizations have a failure, and then I think naturally the inclination may be to fall back to a manual process or a very complex process that maybe you've been using, you're comfortable with, but it wasn't as automated as you needed. And to me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to me it was nice. I think it sounds nice that you were able to find a solution that didn't impact the business, but gave security what it needed to have the visibility to answer the questions that you needed to answer. So if somebody were to ask you, this takes me to my third question here in this section, is if somebody were to ask you, when this is all said and done, you've got Imperva deployed, it's doing everything it's supposed to do, you're up the elevator, you're getting to your room, and somebody says, I heard that you have Imperva. What does Imperva do for you at Banco Popular? How do you answer that?
So databases and the monitoring of databases is crucial in financial services. And there's a requirement to gather, collect, protect, analyze, and find any anomaly, any incident, any reason of suspicions that will take you to an incident, a security incident, when auditing, when reviewing those databases. So what Imperva does for me is that it collects all of that information, puts it in a single place, and helps me build the intelligence to gather from all that info, all that huge pool of information, the actionable items, actionable intelligence that my security operations folks need. That's
Perfect.
in a nutshell.
Well, it's excellent. Well, and that's what I like to hear, right? I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, so that's what I like to hear. So let's dig a little bit into the deployment a little bit. We're not going to get super technical here, but let's get into the deployment. Let's talk about what your experience has been so far in deploying the technology. You mentioned earlier that you had other technologies that had some issues. What was your experience in deploying the Imperva technology? And you mentioned Multicomputos already, so I assume that they were involved or worked with you in that case. Maybe you could explain a little bit in that world and how you got, how did that deployment kind of work out for you guys?
So Multicomputos assist us from the project discussion and the project building. It was very important because you needed to be very careful in understanding the bandwidth required, the CPU consumptions, and all of that, because these are huge databases. So you needed to be very, very careful when it comes to the planning of the rollout. And Multicomputos assist us from that point to the point of selecting the databases for the first deployments and the ones that were going to go next and all of that, so that they came and work with us. And they also work with us in the transfer of knowledge that is needed for those that were going to do the day-to-day operations. So after you roll out all of these tools, you have a huge pool of data, and you need to find the rules and to find the models and to find the exact same the useful things that you need to get from the data. So the entire process of building the team and building the capabilities and the skills in that team to go analyze and produce from that data was also part of the project, and there was Multicomputos assist us in that whole process. So, and it was a good project.
So what would you say are the key aspects then of the success of the project? I mean, I know speaking previously, you talked about setting up a POC first and proving it out and taking small bits at a time, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit on what were those key kind of tidbits of a successful deployment that worked for you guys at Banco Popular.
So the careful production, the careful release of production is one. I mean, you have to be very, very patient, and you have to go, and if you have to reduce your speed and go back to the drawing board, you just have to do it. So you have to be mindful of that. There's no perfect project, and you have to be very careful with that. Otherwise, you're gonna see again the crashes and the production outages and the business barking at you. So that's one of the things. The other thing is you always need to be to have on your plans and your projects knowledge transfer pieces of that. You need to be sure that those that are going to be running the day-to-day operations of each and every one of these tools understand the potential of the tool, and not only understand the potential of the tool, they know who to talk to when an outage in the tool itself happens, on what happens when the tool is, and there are many other tools working on top of these tools. So the having a collision, having a incompatibility issue, or something that is unexpected that happened with, you have this gigantic layers of controls over others. So creating all of that knowledge, what things to do, understand the potential of the tool, and who to talk in case of something goes wrong is also critical for any project. And I believe those two things are probably the summary of the things that I believe are most come to mind when you think about this project.
No, I think that's probably helpful for the people that are listening here. And so one of the other things that I get asked quite frequently, anytime we're having a conversation, is, all right, I deploy your technology, I start looking at stuff. How quickly do I begin to see something that matters to me? How quickly do I see something that's of value? What kind of time frame was that for you guys? And I realize it's going to be different for every organization, but for you, how quickly did you get to the point of, okay, we've had it installed now, where's my information? How long did that take?
Well, you have to be patient on that as well. So maturity and maturing and using a product takes time, takes weeks, takes in many cases it never ends. So you have to keep working and finding best and better solutions and better answers to your questions in these tools. So I could say that after the first 3 weeks, we were actually getting useful information and actionable information, and we started to see that maybe there were things that we needed to improve in the way our databases were configured. Maybe there were things that we should act on, and services and systems that were supposed to be decommissioned, that were still uh, there waiting for you to turn them off. So after that, I would say that after a couple of months, 2 months probably, we were getting um, 60, 75% of what we're getting today, because you will keep working on the tool, you will keep improving your rules, you will keep improving your models, your collection, your databases will be changing all the time. So yeah, a couple of weeks to get the first things, couple of months to feel you're in a plateau, and you will never stop learning about it.
Well, and that's certainly true. As particularly as your organization grows, you continue to add this piece in or that piece in, or continue to see more. The more you put into it, the smarter the system becomes. So let's shift to the last section that we have here. I think we have about 7 minutes left here or so. So I'd like to focus on kind of a before and after kind of story, if you will. So the first question is, what were the challenges that you ultimately wanted to overcome with the Imperva technology? And I know we kind of talked about this at the beginning, right? Why this project? But maybe we rehash again, what were some of those challenges that you were looking to overcome with the Imperva technology?
So the vigilance and the visibility of the databases was pretty much what we were aiming for. We wanted to have a visibility of activities to a point where you will be able to detect anomalies. So that's what we were trying to achieve. And you want to see anomalies because those are the ones that will help you understand if you have or no an incident, or you will have an incident in the near future. So that's one of the key pieces that we were working on, and what were the key pieces that we were aiming at. Of Of course, checking all of the compliance boxes. You want to be sure that you were doing as a minimum, everything there is in every one of those standards you need to comply to. Our local regulation, PCI regulations, NIST standards, because you're going to have auditors coming here with the NIST, and they're also going to come with ISO. And at the end of the day, what do you want to just make sure that the entire thing balance, again, protection and compliance.
That's the case, right? It's what we hear. It's what we talked about at the beginning, right? It's that audit and that balance between audit and security, right? And you need to be able to check the boxes where you have to check boxes, because you're guaranteed to be audited at one time or another. But really what you're solving for, which, to be fair, the reason regulations tend to exist from a security perspective is because we've had so many breaches in the past. Ultimately, people said, all right, we need to put some controls in place to try and persuade organizations, this is the baseline. Now, would you be willing to go beyond that baseline? And I would argue, I'm biased, I would argue with Imperva, you've gone beyond the baseline of regulation into incident detection, being able to find those incidents and incident mitigation and these sorts of things. So the last question I have here is, how does the Imperva solution help other components of your security architecture? For example, SIM, UEBA, user into behavioral analytics, your SOC, and others. How does it interact with the parts of your organization that your security team is probably very familiar with already?
So Imperva became pretty much the SIM of the databases. And what we're getting directly from there is the product of analytics and the product of specific rules, the behaviors that we want to monitor. Everything is done in Imperva and flows to the SIM for the SOC interaction and detection of incidents. So, because if you overwhelm your SIM with everything happening in a database, you're going to need a huge infrastructure for running that kind of SIM. So this Imperva agent that goes to an Imperva server really release and makes a lot lighter your SIM and more efficient the management of incidents and alerts, and that's what the SOC is all about, right? So beyond the collection, the safekeeping of those logs, the ability at the SOC to work with those logs and create the incidents is part of the without overwhelming the SIM. I will think that's probably one of the biggest things we got out of this technology.
Yeah, we've seen that. It's actually a very common thread that I hear when I talk to organizations who had not previously had experience with data security technology. Instead, they've done, let's do what we do with the rest of our technology. Let's take the logs and put them in the SIM and try and make sense of the logs. And they had the exact same experience it sounds like you're having here, which is, depending on your SIM, that can be very expensive. But regardless of your SIM, it becomes very expensive in terms of how much data you're having to store, how you're going to store it, retention, archiving, and all the other things that go into that mix. So now you're no longer managing incidents, you're managing raw logs, which, how many logs do you get for every single individual incident? It could be tens of thousands to millions to each incident that you have. And in that case, that's a lot more storage that you're applying to an incident management platform that was really never designed to be a logging platform. And that's what we've seen quite frequently in organizations. So it's interesting to see that's your similar experience. So 25 minutes goes by pretty quick. I think we got done a little bit early. So we've got time to take some questions from the audience, which is going to be awesome. So we're going to take some questions from the audience. But before we do, because I may not have a chance to thank you ahead of time, is to thank you for coming on here. I know it takes a lot, and you guys are literally out on an island. So I appreciate you taking time to come here and chat with us today. But let's go ahead and take some questions and see where we go from there. So thank you very much, Diego.
Thank you.